Trust is the foundation of all relationships, the invisible thread that binds people together in shared purpose, mutual understanding, and emotional connection. From friendships and romantic partnerships to professional alliances and family bonds, trust serves as the invisible contract that governs our expectations and actions. And yet, trust is one of the most fragile elements of human interaction. It takes time to build, but only moments to break. As human beings, we are inherently social creatures, drawn toward connection and belonging, yet perpetually vulnerable to betrayal, disappointment, and misjudgment. The idea of trusting someone completely might seem idealistic, even noble, but reality teaches a far more sobering lesson. No matter how much we might want to believe otherwise, no human being is immune to flaw, failure, or falsehood. We live in a world where intentions are often masked by appearances. Sometimes the person you trusted yesterday is not the same person you're facing, not the same person. People evolve, their desires shift, their values change, their loyalties are tested. Sometimes the person you trusted yesterday is not the same person you're facing today. This isn't always because of malice or ill will. Sometimes it's the result of personal growth, external pressures, or internal struggles. But regardless of the cause, the result is the same trust, once so certain, begins to waver. When we place complete trust in someone, we hand them a part of ourselves, expecting it to be safe. And when that trust is broken, the damage goes beyond disappointment. It touches the very core of who we are. It's not about becoming cynical or distrusting everyone you meet. It's about understanding the nature of human imperfection. No one is capable of carrying the full weight of another person's hope, security, and belief without eventually faltering under its pressure. When you trust someone completely, you are in essence placing them on a pedestal they never asked for, giving them power over your emotional world that no person is truly equipped to manage. People let us down not only because they are deceptive, but sometimes because they simply cannot live up to the expectations we have unknowingly placed on them. Trust, therefore, must be a balanced transaction. It should be given with open eyes and measured caution, not blindfolded faith. So, it should grow steadily, proven by action and time, not flung forward in a rush of hope or desperation. In doing so, we protect not only ourselves from harm, but others from the unfair burden of being more than human. Expecting someone to never lie, never hurt, never fail is asking for heartbreak. Instead, expect mistakes, expect imperfection. But watch how people handle those moments. Do they take responsibility? Do they show remorse? Do they grow from them? That is where trust finds its true foundation. It's tempting to believe in the fairy tale of absolute trust. We want to believe that there's someone who will never hurt us, never change, never fall short. But that desire often stems from fear. Fear of being alone, fear of uncertainty, fear of vulnerability. And in that fear, we sometimes choose to ignore red flags, excuse behavior, or stay in situations where we are being slowly diminished, all for the sake of preserving the illusion of complete trust. In doing so, we lose ourselves. We begin to measure our worth by someone else's presence, approval, or loyalty. And when they inevitably falter, we are left not only grieving the loss of trust, but questioning our very identity. The truth is, it is not only about guarding ourselves from betrayal, it's also about building resilience. When we place too much trust in another, we become emotionally dependent. Our peace, our confidence, our clarity become tied to someone else's actions and choices. And when they make a mistake or change course, we are shaken to the core. But if we learn to carry our own center, to cultivate self-trust and inner grounding, we become less reactive to the storms around us. People may disappoint us, but they no longer define us. Their failures may hurt, but they no longer break us. This mindset isn't one of isolation or detachment. It's one of conscious engagement. It means choosing to trust with awareness, not naivety. It means valuing your own insight as much as anyone else's promises. It means not outsourcing your judgment, your happiness, or your peace to someone else's hands. This approach demands emotional maturity. It asks you to hold two truths at once: that people are worthy of love and connection, and that they are capable of mistakes and missteps. By holding these truths together, we move through life with grace, discernment, and a deeper understanding of what real trust looks like. Real trust is not blind. It sees clearly. It sees the good and the bad. It sees the kindness and the cruelty. It sees the effort and the excuses. And it chooses to stay or walk away based on wisdom, not illusion. When you trust someone with your eyes wide open, you are not ignoring their flaws. You are accepting them with full knowledge of the risks and rewards. That kind of trust is rare. It's not the default mode of our hearts. It is a conscious choice, built over time and backed by experience. And even then, it is never absolute, because even the most trustworthy person may someday be in a situation where they are tested beyond what they can bear. This is why the most important kind of trust is the one we build within ourselves. The ability to trust our instincts, our boundaries, our inner voice is what shields us from the devastation of misplaced faith. If you know how to listen to yourself, you will know when something feels off, even if you can't explain it. You will recognize when someone's actions don't align with their words. You will know when to speak up, when to forgive, when to let go. That kind of trust doesn't just protect you, it empowers you. It allows you to engage with the world in a way that is open but guarded, hopeful but cautious, connected but sovereign. Trusting someone completely may sound like the highest form of love or loyalty, but it can often mask a form of dependency. It suggests that our emotional well-being is no longer ours to manage, that we have handed it over to someone else. That kind of surrender might feel romantic or noble in the moment, but over time, it can become a source of deep pain. None. Because when people change, and they will, you are left scrambling to rebuild what was once entrusted to them. Your sense of self, your security, your peace, all suddenly feel unstable. And the person who once held them is no longer there to keep them safe. We cannot control how others act, but we can control how we respond. We can choose to build relationships where mutual trust grows gradually, where honesty is the standard, not the exception, and where accountability is welcome, not feared. We can learn to ask the right question, not just to do I trust this person, but have they earned my trust? And can they sustain it? Trust should never be assumed. It should be demonstrated. And the most powerful way we can protect ourselves from unnecessary heartbreak is by reserving our full trust for what is truly infallible, while understanding that all else, every person, every promise, every relationship is subject to change. This is not an excuse to avoid intimacy or vulnerability. In fact, understanding the limits of human trust allows us to love more deeply. When we stop expecting perfection, we start appreciating presence. When we stop demanding constancy, we start celebrating consistency. When we stop idolizing people, we start loving them for who they truly are, not for what we want them to be. And that kind of love is far more durable than the kind built on unrealistic expectations. It's grounded in truth. It's rooted in reality. It leaves room for forgiveness, for growth, for change. We can create stronger, healthier relationships when we let go of the myth of complete trust. We can stop pretending that betrayal is an anomaly and instead recognize it as part of the human experience. Not every betrayal is malicious. Sometimes it's the result of fear, ignorance, or inner conflict. That doesn't excuse it, but it does help us understand it. And understanding gives us choices about how we heal, how we move forward, and how we rebuild. When we trust wisely, we protect our hearts without closing them. We embrace love without losing ourselves. We give others space to be human, and in doing so, we reclaim the power to be whole, regardless of what others do or don't do. Trust is not an all or nothing game. It's a continuum. At one end is blind trust, and at the other is guarded skepticism. Somewhere in the middle lies wisdom, the ability to trust just enough to stay open, but not so much that we become blind to danger. And it's in that middle ground that we find our strength. We stop needing certainty from others and start creating stability within ourselves. We learn that it's okay to have doubts, to ask questions, to need time. We become discerning rather than dismissive, thoughtful rather than reactive. And in that space, we begin to experience trust not as a leap of faith, but as a series of steps taken one day at a time. Even the people we love the most are capable of disappointing us. That doesn't mean they're bad. It means they're human. But our well-being should not be tethered to their consistency. When we stop placing the weight of complete trust on others, we free them to be themselves, and we free ourselves from constant anxiety. We create relationships that are based on mutual respect, not control, on mutual growth, not perfection. We become more patient, more forgiving, and ultimately more at peace. Too often, we fall into the trap of believing that love and trust must be absolute to be real. But the truth is, love can be deep and sincere without requiring blind allegiance. Trust can be meaningful without being total. When we approach our relationships with this understanding, we relieve both ourselves and others from unrealistic pressure. We create space for dialogue, for questions, for honest confrontation when things don't feel right. And that's not a sign of weakness or suspicion. It's a sign of emotional intelligence and maturity. Real trust thrives in honesty, not denial. It survives not because it's never tested, but because it is strong enough to bend without breaking the people closest to us. Our friends, our partners, our families will inevitably make choices we don't understand, say things that hurt, or fall short of what we hope for. We have to be prepared for this, not with resentment, but with readiness to process, to pause, to ask what we need in that moment. If we've built our emotional world around the idea that this person would never hurt us, then any misstep shatters our foundation. But if we've built our inner world on the understanding that people are complex and flawed, we remain grounded. Disappointed, maybe. Hurt, yes. But not destroyed. There is great power in restraint, in the ability to say, I love you, I believe in you, but I will not give you power over my peace. This does not mean withholding affection or being cold. It means protecting the parts of yourself that are sacred. It means having healthy boundaries. It means trusting others with what they've shown themselves capable of carrying and no more. It means not romanticizing potential or clinging to what someone was 5 years ago if who they are now contradicts that memory. It means being present, not delusional, grounded, not dependent. It's easy to mistake closeness for certainty. The more time we spend with someone, the more we think we know them fully. But people carry layers, some they've never revealed, some they haven't even discovered themselves. And when circumstances shift, stress, success, loss, fear, those hidden parts often come to the surface. If our trust was built on a static version of someone, we may find ourselves bewildered when they start to change. But if our trust was built on a living, breathing awareness that people evolve, we are far better equipped to respond to those changes. Every time we trust someone fully without discernment, we gamble not just with our hearts, but with our stability. And while no one is immune to heartbreak, there is a difference between hurt that shapes us and hurt that shatters us. The former we can learn from. The latter often stems from placing too much weight in places never meant to bear it. We were not meant to outsource our emotional grounding entirely to another person. We were not built to find all our safety, validation, and direction from someone else's behavior. It's not love. That's imbalance. Healthy trust is not about certainty. It's about the willingness to engage despite uncertainty while still maintaining self-awareness. It's about learning to live in the in-between, not fully exposed, but not completely closed off. That middle space requires courage. It asks us to keep showing up knowing we might get hurt, but also knowing we'll be okay if we do. That's what makes trust so meaningful. Not that it guarantees safety, but that it reflects a choice to believe. With our eyes open and with our hearts intact, we often think of betrayal as the worst outcome. But betrayal is not always loud. Sometimes it comes in silence, in slow neglect, in the quiet erosion of commitment, in the moments when someone we trusted simply stops showing up for us. And that is why we must learn to read the subtle signs, not with paranoia, but with awareness. Not everyone who disappears meant to hurt you. Not everyone who stays knows how to love you well. And not everyone who tries will succeed. Trust, then, is not just a measure of their actions, but a mirror for our discernment. Self-trust becomes crucial here. When we trust ourselves, we do not ignore the truth that our bodies, our instincts, our memories try to tell us. We do not gaslight ourselves into staying in situations that don't feel right. We do not keep extending second chances to people who never asked for them. We don't confuse our kindness with martyrdom. Trusting ourselves means knowing when enough is enough and walking away not in anger, but in clarity. It means knowing the difference between forgiveness and self-abandonment, between patience and prolonged self-harm, There will be people in our lives who show us glimpses of who they could be. Moments of clarity or connection that make us want to believe in them entirely. And while it is a beautiful thing to hope, it can also be dangerous to expect those moments to define the whole. One act of goodness does not erase a pattern of harm. One apology does not undo a history of disregard. One shared screen does not make up for a daily reality that erodes our worth. Or when we trust too quickly or too deeply without evidence, we hand over our sense of safety to hope rather than reality. Hope is important. It is the light that keeps us moving forward, but it must be tempered with wisdom. We must stop making people the exception to every rule because we are afraid of being alone. We must stop twisting ourselves into shapes to accommodate someone else's comfort. We must stop pretending that love means tolerance of anything and everything. It doesn't. Love has boundaries. Trust has conditions. Respect must be mutual. And when those elements are missing, trust becomes a liability sometimes. We are afraid to admit the truth because we don't want to seem unloving. But honesty is not cruelty. It is clarity. And clarity is a gift. When we stop trusting blindly, we begin to see situations and people for what they are, not what we wish they were. With that vision comes power. The power to choose differently, to protect our peace, to honor our truth, and to surround ourselves with people who value and reciprocate that same kind of conscious trust. There is a quiet strength in being cautious. Not cold, not hardened, but wise. A strength in observing and waiting and allowing someone to show you who they are through consistency, not declarations. A strength in knowing that you can enjoy someone's presence without needing them to become your everything. A strength in recognizing that your life does not depend on any one person, and your worth does not hinge on someone else's ability to treat you well. That is the kind of strength that builds freedom. And from that freedom comes the ability to love more fully, because you are no longer loving from need, you are loving from wholeness. Every betrayal is a teacher. Every broken trust leaves behind a lesson. Not about how awful people are, but about how we can better protect and preserve what matters most within us. We learn who we are, what we value, what we're willing to compromise on, and what is non-negotiable. We learn how to ask better questions, how to listen more deeply, and how to walk away more quickly when something no longer aligns. These lessons aren't easy, but they are necessary. The goal isn't to never trust again. The goal is to trust with discernment, to trust slowly, to trust wisely, to trust in ways that allow room for both joy and reality. And most importantly, to trust yourself to survive whatever the outcome may be. Because in the end, no one can offer you the security that comes from knowing who you are, standing in your truth, and refusing to surrender that truth for the sake of someone else's comfort or approval. When we begin to trust ourselves deeply, we stop seeking constant reassurance from others. We stop needing validation from the outside world to feel grounded in who we are. That shift is subtle but profound. Suddenly, we're no longer devastated by someone else's withdrawal. We're no longer unraveling at the first sign of tension or disappointment. We may still feel the sting of being let down, but we recover faster, wiser, stronger. And that recovery is not fueled by bitterness or revenge, but by clarity and grace. We understand that we can grieve the loss of what we hope for without losing ourselves in the process. It is a radical act of self-respect to say, I see who you are, and I honor that. But I also see what I need, and I will not ignore that. Too often, trust becomes a compromise of our own instincts. But we sense that something is off, yet we push that feeling aside to maintain the peace. We shrink ourselves to make someone else more comfortable, convince ourselves that our needs are too much, too dramatic, too inconvenient. But trust should never cost us our own voice. It should never silence our truth. If it does, it is not trust. It is submission disguised as love. We must learn to be loyal to ourselves first. Not in a selfish or arrogant way, but in a way that recognizes that our peace, our clarity, and our dignity are not up for negotiation. When you stand firm in yourself, the way you trust others becomes less about dependence, more about shared growth. You're not clinging to them to feel whole. You're inviting them to walk beside you as two complete individuals. In that kind of trust, there is freedom. Freedom to be honest, to be imperfect, to be real. And in that space, deeper connections are born. It is not uncommon to encounter people who use trust as a form of control. They expect your unwavering belief in them while giving little in return. They demand forgiveness without accountability, loyalty without honesty, closeness without vulnerability. These are relationships built not on trust, but on fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of being alone. And fear, when left unchecked, corrodes the very foundation of connection. In these dynamics, trust becomes a weapon rather than a gift, a means of manipulation rather than a bridge between hearts. The only way to break free from such patterns is to develop the courage to walk away when your boundaries are not honored. To realize that trust does not require you to stay silent, endure mistreatment, or betray your own intuition. You can still care for someone and choose to protect your own peace. You can still hope for their growth while acknowledging that their current behavior is not something you can accept. Trusting yourself enough to walk away is one of the hardest things to do, but it is also one of the most empowering sometimes. The person who breaks your trust is someone you never expected, a lifelong friend, a partner you dreamed a future with, a family member whose approval meant everything. And when that breach comes, it cuts deeper than words can describe. You question not just them, but everything. Every memory, every gesture, every promise. The mind replays moments trying to understand where things shifted, what signs you missed, what truth you refused to see. It's a painful reckoning, but it's also a necessary one. Because in that unraveling, you are given a chance to rebuild, not just your trust in others, but your trust in yourself. You begin to understand that betrayal does not erase the good times, but it does demand that you reevaluate the truth behind them. Not with hatred, but with honesty. You begin to accept that someone can love you in their own way and still hurt you deeply. That intentions do not always match impact. That promises made in vulnerability can still be broken in weakness. And through that acceptance, you find a strange kind of peace. A peace that comes not from denial, but from letting go of illusions. We must remember that trust is not just about believing in someone's words, but observing their patterns. Anyone can say the right thing in a moment of guilt or desperation, but time reveals truth. Repetition reveals character. And those who truly value your trust will show it in how they consistently show up, not just when it's convenient, but when it's hard. Not just when they need something, but when you do. They will understand that trust is not their right to claim, but their responsibility to earn. When you hold your trust with care, you begin to attract people who respect it. People who recognize that your guardedness is not bitterness, but wisdom. That your boundaries are not walls, but invitations to engage with integrity. That your questions are not accusations, but requests for honesty. These are the kinds of people who will cherish the slow unfolding of trust, not rush it for their own gain. And with them, trust becomes not just a word, but a way of being to live wisely in this world. We must carry both openness and caution. We must be willing to see the best in people while never abandoning the responsibility to protect our own well-being. We must resist the temptation to make someone our anchor when they have not yet shown they can hold that weight. And we must remember that our capacity to love should never exceed our commitment to self-respect. There will always be people who ask for more trust than they are prepared to handle. People who demand closeness but disappear when vulnerability is required. People who take and take but give little in return. It is not your job to fix them. It is not your role to prove your worth by enduring their inconsistency. Your only responsibility is to know when to stay and when to let go. To choose yourself without shame. To trust in your own ability to navigate the uncertainty of relationships without losing sight of your value. And the beauty of this approach is that it doesn't harden you. It strengthens you. You stop seeing the world as black and white, good and bad, loyal and disloyal. You begin to see the nuance in human behavior. You understand that people are doing the best they can with what they know, and sometimes their best still falls short of what you need. That doesn't make them evil, but it may mean they are not meant to occupy sacred space in your life. So hold your trust like something sacred. Don't give it away cheaply. Don't hand it over out of loneliness or fear. Let it be earned through time and action. Let it be tested, not just assumed. And above all, never allow the failure of others to convince you that your desire to trust was wrong. Your heart is not the problem. Your openness is not the issue. It is the lack of discernment. not the presence of love, that causes harm as you continue to walk through this world. You will find that your ability to trust wisely becomes a form of freedom, a freedom that allows you to connect deeply without losing yourself, to forgive without forgetting who you are, to hope without being naive, to love without handing over the keys to your peace. And in that kind of living, there is clarity, there is strength, there is wholeness, there is a quiet dignity in learning to walk away when the energy no longer feels safe. Not because you're giving up, but because you're finally listening to yourself. The younger version of you may have begged people to stay, clung to relationships that chipped away at your peace, compromised just to feel chosen. But with time, you grow into a version of yourself that chooses presence over pretense, who chooses clarity over confusion, who no longer confuses proximity with partnership or shared history with shared values. You begin to understand that just because someone has been in your life for a long time doesn't mean they deserve the most sacred parts of you. Longevity is not loyalty. Familiarity is not safety. We hold on to people sometimes out of habit, out of comfort, even out of guilt. But none of those are reasons to trust someone with your heart, your dreams, your inner world. Trust is not owed, it is earned. And no amount of time can replace the kind of integrity and intention that trust requires. The idea that we must give everyone a clean slate over and over, regardless of what they've shown us, is a myth that keeps many people stuck in cycles of betrayal. Forgiveness and trust are not the same. You can forgive someone without welcoming them back into your life. You can wish them well without allowing them to keep hurting you. That distinction is vital. Forgiveness heals you. Boundaries protect you. Trust without both of those elements becomes a revolving door of pain. There is also this illusion that we're being unfair or cold when we hold back trust. But there is nothing unfair about waiting to see consistent, respectful behavior before opening yourself completely. There is nothing unkind about asking for proof instead of promises. There is nothing wrong with taking your time. Anyone who pressures you to trust them without giving you the space to evaluate their actions is not asking for connection. They're asking for control. Your life is your own. You are the keeper of your peace. Every person you let in is either helping to build that peace or threatening to dismantle it. The more we trust without awareness, the more likely we are to surround ourselves with people who drain us. But when we trust wisely, intentionally, we begin to attract a different kind of energy. People who meet us with depth, not demands, with empathy, not ego, with consistency, not confusion. And here's what's beautiful about trust that is slowly earned. It's strong. It can hold weight. It can handle change, stress, time. It doesn't collapse at the first sign of challenge because it wasn't built in haste. It was built in observation, in mutual respect, in small daily moments that prove more than any grand gesture ever could. This is the kind of trust that supports love in its truest form. Not infatuation, not dependency, but love rooted in truth and freedom. So when you decide to trust, let it be a conscious act, not a reaction, not a coping mechanism, not a way to fill a void. Let it come from a place of fullness. Let it rise from a deep knowing within yourself that even if this person changes, even if this relationship shifts, you are still grounded. You are still whole. You are still you. People may come and go. Some will surprise you with their growth and others with their absence. But you will never again lose yourself the way you once did. Because you've learned. You've been burned, but not broken, disappointed, but not destroyed. And now your trust is not a gift you scatter carelessly. It's a sacred offering given to those who show up. Not just with words, but with the kind of presence that proves they can be trusted. That is where the strength lies. Not in trusting everyone completely, but in learning how to trust intentionally. Not in never being hurt, but in healing without hardening. And the more you honor it, the more you will find that peace is not something others can give or take from you. It is something you protect, preserve, and carry within, no matter what the world brings. One of the most powerful shifts in life is the moment you realize that trust isn't about controlling outcomes. It's about managing expectations. You can no longer afford to hand your emotional well-being to someone else with no boundaries, hoping they'll handle it with care. That's not fairness. That's avoidance of responsibility for your own peace. When you stop expecting perfection from others and start expecting clarity from yourself, you move differently. You speak with more intention. You listen more carefully. You stop chasing answers where people have only given you patterns. You no longer need grand declarations or empty promises to feel secure. Instead, you look for consistency, for honesty when it's inconvenient, for accountability when it's uncomfortable, for actions that speak long after the words have faded. And if those things aren't there, you don't beg, you don't plead, you don't lower your standards just to say you have someone in your corner. You simply make space for better, for peace, for self-trust. You learn to trust the unfolding of your life. Even when the road twists in unexpected directions, there is deep wisdom in remembering that people are not who they say they are. They are who they show you they are over time through patterns under pressure. Trusting too quickly robs you of the opportunity to truly understand someone's heart. And trusting too completely leaves no room for the truth to breathe. You need time. You need clarity. You need the quiet observation that reveals what someone does when no one is watching, what they choose when nothing is at stake. Some may accuse you of being distant, cautious, guarded. Let them. They don't know the cost of the trust you once gave freely, the pain, the disappointment, the rebuilding. They don't know how many nights you spent second-guessing yourself, wondering if your standards were too high, your boundaries too much. Only you know what it took to get here. To this version of yourself who no longer abandons your own needs for the sake of someone else's comfort. And that version deserves protection. It's not that you don't believe in connection. You do. But you've stopped believing that trust must come before discernment. You now understand that healthy trust is built on mutual effort, not emotional dependency. You don't need someone to complete you. You need them to meet you, to grow with you, to honor the space you offer without trying to possess it. Anything less than that is not worth the risk. You may still stumble. You may still trust the wrong people at times. That's okay. It's part of being human. The goal was never to become untouchable. The goal was to become self-aware. And every experience, every lesson, even the painful ones, brought you closer to that self-awareness. You now have the tools to pause before giving too much, the strength to walk away when something doesn't feel right. The courage to say this is enough even when your heart still wants to hold on. And here's the unexpected gift in it all. The more you trust yourself, the more peaceful your relationships become. You no longer look at people with suspicion, but with clarity. You don't need to control them because you trust your own boundaries. You don't need to chase closure because you've made peace within. That inner foundation changes everything. You become someone who loves deeply but wisely. Someone who can be close without clinging, open without being exposed. Present without losing yourself. You start to notice things others overlook. The small inconsistencies, the silent retreats, the dismissive comments passed off as jokes. You don't need to call them out every time. You simply take note. You let people show you who they are and adjust your access accordingly. Not out of spite, not out of fear, but out of respect. For yourself, for your time, for your energy. You understand now that trust isn't about fixing others. It's about honoring your own insight. And when you do find people who match your energy, who respect your process, who show up with steadiness and sincerity, it's beautiful. It's rare. It's something to be cherished. But even then, you don't abandon your wisdom. You don't fall back into the idea that someone else is your entire world. No, you let them be part of your world. You walk together, not entangled, but aligned. You love them, but you don't lose yourself in them. You trust them, but you never forget to trust yourself first, because trust is a choice. A responsibility, a risk. And most of all, it is a reflection of the relationship you built with yourself. When that relationship is solid, the rest follows. You no longer need to chase certainty in others because you found it within.